The elevators hummed like veins of the building, carrying hundreds of lives up into the sky. The smell of hot coffee and paper still lingered in the corridors, mixed with faint perfume and the ozone tang of air conditioning. Phones rang, keyboards clicked, and somewhere far below, the traffic on West Street rumbled like a distant river. On the 78th floor, a yellow Labrador lay curled at her owner's feet, eyes half closed but ears awake. Roselle could hear everything, the creak of a chair 3 desks away, the thud of a file cabinet closing, the faint pulse of footsteps on the carpet. It was peak time. Every desk was occupied. Every conversation carried the tone of a busy day starting. Her owner leaned down and scratched behind her ears, his touch familiar, grounding. Then something reached her before it reached anyone else, a faint vibration through the floor. Not the kind from footsteps or machinery, deeper, heavier, coming from far away yet fast. Her ears tilted forward. The fluorescent lights above flickered for half a second. A strange, low rumble swelled in the distance like thunder caught in metal walls. Roselle's nose twitched. The air had changed, just slightly. A metallic tang, a sharpness she couldn't name, riding on the still morning air. And then the sun was low over the savannah. A 12-year-old girl walked home from school, her books pressed to her chest. She didn't hear the footsteps at first. 4 men, faces hard, eyes cold, moved in behind her. A hand reached out to grab her. And then she froze, not because of them, though, but because behind them, in the tall grass, 3 lions appeared, their golden eyes locked on the men. What happened next would make the world question who the real predators were, cut to thousands of miles away. Under the blazing summer sun, a man swam in open water with friends. The sea was calm until shadows began darting beneath them. A fin broke the surface, then another, then 4 more. Dolphins racing in circles, splashing, driving the swimmers together. At first, they thought the dolphins were playing. Until they saw it, a dark shape gliding below, a shark getting closer. The sun was bright over the coast of North Island, New Zealand. The sea spread out like liquid glass. A light breeze carried the scent of salt and kelp. It was the kind of day when the ocean looks harmless, almost gentle. Rob Howes adjusted his swim goggles and glanced toward his daughter Sophie. She was laughing, splashing water at her 2 friends. Their giggles rose and fell with the sound of the waves. Rob's heart swelled. These were the moments that made the stress of life feel small. They were about 100 meters from shore now, floating in a lazy circle. The water was calm. Almost too calm. Underneath, where the sunlight turned to green shadows, the ocean was never still. Something moved down there, a whisper of motion that the humans didn't see, but someone else did. From the deep, 4 gray shapes emerged, sleek and powerful, bottlenose dolphins. They came fast, then slowed, circling the swimmers. "Whoa, look at that," Sophie shouted. Rob grinned. "They're just curious, honey." But the dolphins weren't playing. One of the larger males slapped his tail hard against the surface, the crack echoing across the water. Another swam straight in front of Sophie, blocking her when she tried to drift away. Rob laughed nervously. "Guess they really like us." Then one of the dolphins, the biggest of them all, swam directly at Rob, stopping inches away, forcing him back toward the group. Its eyes locked on his. In that moment, Rob noticed something. All 4 dolphins were facing outward. And they weren't moving randomly, they were forming a wall. A chill slid down Rob's spine, and not from the water. He dipped his head beneath the surface. The muffled world below was a shifting green, beams of sunlight slicing through. And then he saw it. Farther out, a dark shadow, longer than a car, moving with terrible grace. A great white shark. It wasn't charging, not yet. It was circling, testing. Rob's heart pounded in his ears. He broke the surface, his voice tight. "Girls, stay in the middle." "Don't move," Sophie's smile faltered. "Dad?" The dolphins tightened their formation. The biggest one slapped its tail again, harder this time, the sound sharp as a gunshot. The shark stayed just at the edge of visibility, but Rob knew it was there. Watching, minutes crawled by. The dolphins moved constantly, switching places, keeping their bodies between the humans and the predator. Sophie whispered, "Why aren't we swimming back?" Rob swallowed. We can't outswim it, just trust them." 40 minutes felt like 40 years. The sun began to sink lower, and the water cooled. The shark circled again, its pale belly flashing once in the green light. The dolphins didn't break their line. Not once. Then, without warning, the shadow faded into the depths. Gone. The dolphins held their wall a moment longer, as if making sure, before slowly opening a gap toward the shore. Rob's legs felt like lead as they swam. Every few strokes he glanced back, and each time one of the dolphins was there, following. When they finally reached the beach, Rob turned in the shallows, just in time to see the biggest dolphin leap from the water, sunlight bursting off its wet skin before it vanished into the waves. For years after, Rob wondered why. Why would wild animals risk themselves for strangers? Science says it's an instinct, a behavior to protect their young from sharks. But in his heart, Rob believed something else. That day, the dolphins saw them not as intruders, but as part of the pod, and they drew a line in the water that no predator dared to cross. It was an ordinary September morning, the kind that smells faintly of coffee drifting from street carts, of bagels warming in ovens, of the city's heartbeat in the early rush. High above the streets, on the 78th floor of the North Tower, a yellow Labrador lay at the feet of her owner, her ears tuned to sounds most people never notice, the faint hum of fluorescent lights, the whisper of shoes across the carpet, the slow, steady breathing of the man she served. Roselle was her name. She was a guide dog. Her world was built on scent and vibration, on the subtle language between human and animal, and that morning, something shifted. It began with a sound, deep, rolling, unnatural. The air pressure in the room changed, as if the building itself had taken a sudden breath. A split second later, the impact came. The floor trembled under Roselle's paws, metal screamed. Glass shattered somewhere far above. The scent of jet fuel burst into the air, sharp, chemical, choking. People gasped, cried out. Her owner froze for half a second. But Roselle didn't. She stood, tail still, body braced, waiting for the command. She didn't know what had happened, but she knew what she had to do. Get him out. The stairwell door groaned open. It was already hot. Smoke began to seep in, wrapping itself around the walls like a living thing. Step after step, Roselle guided him down. Her pace was steady, unhurried, not too fast for the man's hand resting on her harness. Around them, dozens of people poured into the stairs, voices breaking, footsteps clanging on metal treads. On the 70th floor, someone stumbled in panic. Roselle paused, blocking her owner with her body until the chaos passed. She didn't see fear as humans did. She measured danger in the tremor of a hand, the sharp pull on a leash, the tension in a voice. Halfway down, the heat thickened. Smoke clawed at their lungs. Somewhere far below, alarms wailed, their pitch drilling into Roselle's ears. Still, she kept moving, forward, down, minutes stretched into eternity. By the 30th floor, sweat was pouring down her owner's face. His breathing grew ragged. Roselle nudged his knee lightly, reminding him one more step, then another. When they reached the 10th floor landing, a deep, rolling thunder roared from above. It wasn't thunder. It was the sound of steel collapsing. The tower was dying. People screamed. The stairwell shook. Dust rained down. For a moment, the crowd surged, bodies pressing tight. Roselle planted her feet, holding steady so her owner wouldn't be thrown off balance. Then the last flight of stairs. The doors to the lobby burst open, but the lobby was gone, windows shattered. The air was thick with white dust. A firefighter waved them forward, his voice muffled through his mask. Roselle followed his scent. Sweat, smoke, ash, until the air changed again, cooler now, moving. Outside, they had barely reached the street when the impossible happened. A roar louder than anything they had heard, and the ground itself seemed to leap. Roselle felt it through her bones. The tower was falling. Her owner couldn't see it, but Roselle, she could feel the shadow rushing down. Without hesitation, she pulled hard, dragging him toward the subway entrance nearby. They ran into the darkness as debris swallowed the street above. In that tunnel, with the dust choking the air, Roselle pressed herself against him, her breathing steady, her heart beating in time with his. She had led him down 1,463 steps through fire, smoke, and falling steel. She had led 30 other people too, strangers who had followed the calm, sure steps of a yellow Labrador through the worst day in modern history. Hours later, when they finally emerged into the strange, gray world outside, Roselle's coat was coated in ash, her nose blackened from smoke, but her tail gave one slow wag. Job done. Friend safe. In the days that followed, she became a symbol of loyalty and courage. News cameras loved her. But Roselle didn't care about the spotlight. She cared about the familiar voice that told her she was a good girl, and the warm hand that held her leash, still alive because she had walked through hell without hesitation. On September 11, 2001, heroes came in many forms. Some wore uniforms. Some wore suits, and one wore a guide harness and had a heart that knew no fear. It was June in Ethiopia. The air was heavy with the smell of the rainy season wet earth, blooming acacia, and the faint smoke of cooking fires. In a small village on the edge of the savannah lived a 12-year-old girl named Amara. She was bright, with a laugh that could melt away the hardest of days and a mind full of dreams. Her father had died when she was 7, and her mother worked the fields alone, saving every coin to keep Amara in school. That afternoon, Amara was walking home from classes. She carried her books in a cloth bag, humming the tune her mother always sang while grinding maize. She didn't notice the pickup truck parked beneath the trees, its windows tinted, its engine silent. The first sound she heard was footsteps, then hands. Rough, calloused hands clamped over her mouth. A scream died in her throat as she was dragged into the back of the truck. The door slammed shut. She kicked, thrashed, bit, but they were stronger. There were 4 of them, strangers from another province. They drove for hours. When they finally stopped, she was in a small hut deep in the wilderness. They told her what they wanted. She was to be sold to a man she'd never met. A man 3 times her age in exchange for cattle and cash. Forced marriage. Days passed. She refused to eat. She kept her eyes on the door, hoping the police might find her, praying to God in the dark nights when she could hear hyenas calling in the distance. By the 7th day, the kidnappers grew restless. They had heard rumors the police were searching nearby villages. That night, they decided to move her. The journey was on foot now, through the tall grass and thorny bush, the kind of land where shadows watch you. And that was when the sound came. It started as a low rumble in the earth so soft it could have been thunder. But then came the growl, deep, raw, ancient. The kidnappers froze. Their eyes darted into the dark. Out from the brush, golden eyes began to appear. 1, 2, 3 pairs of eyes. Lions. The men panicked. They tried to drag Amara faster, but the lions advanced. The leader of the pride, a large male with a dark mane, let out a roar so powerful it seemed to shake the air itself. The kidnappers dropped her and ran, crashing through the undergrowth, disappearing into the night. Amara was left standing there, trembling. The lions didn't pounce. They circled her slowly, sniffing the air, then sat down, one in front, one on each side. They didn't growl, they didn't bare their teeth, they just stayed. Minutes turned to hours. In the distance, she heard voices shouting, calling her name. Police officers moving through the grass with flashlights. When they finally found her, they froze at the sight, this small girl, standing among 3 lions as if they were her guardians. The animals didn't move until the officers approached. Then, as quietly as they had appeared, they rose, turned, and walked away into the brush. Sergeant Winmu Wedage, one of the officers, would later say, "They stood guard until we found her, and then they just left her like a gift and went back into the forest." Amara told the authorities everything, that her kidnappers had beaten her, but the lions had never once threatened her. She swore she could feel something in their eyes, not hunger. Not danger, but protection. The men were caught days later. They never spoke about the lions, but in the village stories began to grow. Some said the lions thought her cries were those of a lost cub. Others said it was the spirit of her father, guiding the pride to save her. Amara's life changed after that. She still walks the path from school, but now she looks out at the horizon differently. She knows that somewhere out there, 3 lions once decided her life was worth guarding. And sometimes late at night, when the wind carries the sound of the savannah into the village, she swears she hears a distant roar and smiles, knowing her guardians are still out there. Because in a world where humans can be cruel, sometimes it is nature that reminds us what protection truly means.